All right, the recording has begun. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. And huge thanks to Dominic. Dominic put a topic on the list for tonight, and I didn't check until Saturday, and I was really worried that I was going to have to come up with something at very short notice. So I appreciate Dominic. I appreciate everybody else who's signed up to host the topic. Makes my life so much easier when other people are willing to step up and lead the discussion. So I really appreciate it. Tonight's topic is going to be teams that mentor or coach or assist FTC and FLL teams. And Dominic, I don't have any other announcements. The floor is yours.
Alrighty, thank you. For those that don't know me, I'm Dominic on 2491 No Mythic, and I do mostly non-technical stuff, but then I also do strategy. So as Scott was saying, just a little bit about like FLL and FTC and how FRC teams can support and mentor those teams and sort of thinking of best practices around that. So for those of you who don't know, FIRST as an organization is split into many different programs, and the two I'm mostly focusing on tonight is FLL, which is First Lego League, and FTC, which is First Tech Challenge. And so First Lego League, I think, is for kindergarten through 8th grade, and they use the little like Lego Mindstorm robots. I think it's now like Spike Prime, but whatever. And then FTC uses parts similar to FRC, but on a smaller scale. I think the robots are roughly 18 by 18 inches is their max. So smaller, but definitely still some of the same skills. So I was just going to go over a little bit about what our team does at our school, and then going to open up the floor about how other teams do it, sort of thinking about how can we make it better. So our school, well, we're actually from two schools, Avalon and Great River, but Great River has 4 FLL teams this year and an FTC team. And we've sort of started getting into mentoring the two teams, or the many teams, I guess it's now 5, from the FRC team. And so I think this year we have like 2, maybe 3 students mentoring the FTC team, and I was the only one mentoring the FLL team. So it's definitely still a young program. But, you know, we just had our competitions for the FLL teams, which went really well. And so, you know, that's been going pretty well. And then we also do summer camps over the summer for the FLL teams. And so those are teaching sort of a lot of engineering skills and programming skills and whatnot. And then if any of y'all want, and so those are mentored from students on our team that volunteer for they're roughly a week. We do 3 of them over the summer, and they just build robots and complete different challenges and stuff like that. And so, so that's sort of what our team does for the most part. And I guess I just wanted to open up on the floor, like, how do other teams mentor? Do they mentor? Yeah, Jesse?
I'm just curious, do you have a curriculum that you run through with those summer camps with the FLL kids? Is there something that's publicly available?
Yeah, so on our YouTube, we have a couple of videos, and then we also have a handbook that I'm posting to YouTube right there, and then I'll post a link to the handbook that we use. And so those have sort of an intro to the programming language and the different pieces, and then also some example stuff and like challenges and whatnot. And so
cool, because we're just getting a few FLL teams started or restarted up in our area. So I think something like that could be very beneficial to us up here. Thanks.
Yeah.
Dominic, how many kids do your FLL teams have? You said you have 4 teams. How many kids is that total?
Yeah, so we have 4 teams, each of 6 students, and so we have 24 FLL students.
And would you go ahead? Sorry.
Yeah, and then we have 2 parent coaches per team. And our rule is if you volunteer as a coach, your child automatically gets on the team. And then we have 1 teacher who's like the coordinator of the 4 teams, and so they buy the space and do all the logistics stuff.
And do you find 6 is the optimal number, or if you had your choice, would they be bigger or smaller?
I feel like 6 is a pretty good spot, especially since then you can split into 2 reasonably sized teams within that team. So you can have like 2 students working on building programming, and you can have 4 students working on the project and whatnot. And I feel like that works really well. In my experience, working on a 10-person FL team, that was far too many when I was in 8th grade. So I feel like 6 is probably right around the number to hit, as because then you also allow a lot of students on the experience. Personally, I would probably say 4 or 5 is a better number, but for then you can only get 16 students on 4 teams and whatnot. So.
And does No Mythic own the robotics kits that you guys use?
Yeah. So how we go about it is our FRC team, No Mythic, we supply each FLL team with a budget of, I think it's $500, and then our FTC team gets a budget of probably $2,000 or $3,000, and so those are coming out of our FRC budget, and so yeah, all of the pieces technically the team owns, but they're all in a separate room. So yeah.
Got a question here.
Yeah, go for it.
So we don't have a team, and I was thinking about probably starting a team in my, starting a couple of teams in my school next year as a feeder program into our FRC program. Now, thought about it. Maybe have us just be the sponsor of those 2 teams, where the financial will come from our team budget. Now, my question for the group is, I can't run these practices. So how are you guys, having those practices run by? I can do the logistics and those other things, and based on my student devotion to FRC, I don't think they can run those practices either, because then I'll be pushing my luck. So what roles do parents play? How much of an active role do parents play in your programs?
The nice thing with First Lego League is that it's pretty self-explanatory. For the most part, the coaches are more there to organize the work and sort of keep the students on track. And so you really don't need that much technical experience with it. There's also a lot of resources out there for new coaches. I know High Tech Kids, which is sort of the distributor of First Lego League and First Tech Challenge, they do coaches training over the summer. And so we have found really great success with having parents be coaches.
Okay, because I was thinking, if I have, let's say, if we had 2 teams of 6 or so, and then have 2 families run each practices like at a time, so that way, it's not just one family always going on. If that one family, if one parent was out that day, they still have a coach. That's kind of what I was thinking, because, I'm always in the building. I can be that go-to person if they have other questions about things, but I just, that has been my only big reservation.
Yeah. I mean, we have parents and it works fine. I mean, you're not getting Coach of the Year, but it works, especially when you have students who are motivated to do the work. It works really well when you have students on the team who are really interested in the work, and the parents are really there to just supervise, basically. I think it works.
So Dominic, could you describe kind of a typical? So you said you're the only one that mentors FLL. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you're doing it for 4 teams. Can you kind of describe what your typical night looks like in terms of, what kind of things you're helping students with, how you're bouncing group to group, maybe even are all 4 groups there at the same time and they're just in 4 different tables? How does that all work?
Yeah. So, we have 4 separate teams that all are in the same room at separate tables, and we have 2 mission boards that we set up. And for the most part, I'm just sort of bouncing around from group to group, answering questions, especially on the technical side. So thinking about the programming, because I have a lot of experience with that. And sort of just like the idea of like, okay, our robot's not working. How can we identify what the problem is? Sort of just thinking of the engineering design process as someone who is now on the higher levels of robotics, sort of using those skills that we learn in our program and sort of teaching them, being like, all right, here is how you identify the problem. Now let's brainstorm solutions. Now let's prototype and then build and test, and going through the engineering design cycle with them, which is definitely helpful. And sort of just bouncing around, providing, like, answering questions. I know a lot of the time it's like answering rules questions, which is mostly just reading the game manual, but sort of just being that sort of expert in the room, which does not take much work, but just being that sort of trustworthy figure that they can rely on. Yeah, Jesse?
Yeah. So just, I don't know how everybody else does it, and we just got our team fired back up this year. But so when do you guys start meeting? How many days a week do you meet? How many hours of meeting are you there? Like FRC, we all know is just gruelingly, rigorously insane. And FLL doesn't have to be that way for sure. I don't think so.
Yeah. So it's pretty convenient that FLL, they're actually ending around this time for the most part. And so they're sort of parallel, like they're opposite seasons, which is very convenient. And so we, during our off season, we meet only once a week on Tuesdays, FRC. And then our FLL teams meet on Wednesday from 4 to 5:30, so an hour and a half, with a snack break. And then they met maybe every other Saturday. By the time competitions were nearing, it turned into every Saturday. And those were from 9 to noon with a snack break. So it's definitely not too much time. I would probably allocate, so that was 4.5 hours a week. And I think the teams might have enjoyed a little bit more time. So anywhere in the ballpark from 4 to 6 hours, it's not too much. And making sure to keep those practices short is definitely an important thing with the children of that age group. You have 4th through 8th graders. Our program is mostly limited to 4th through 6th graders, and they get distracted easily, and their patience is thin.
And you guys start meeting in September, October?
Yeah, we tried meeting really right at the start of the school year. The competition is actually released in August 1st. And so a lot of like the neighborhood teams or the 4-H teams get started then. But yeah, getting it started as soon as you can is definitely a perk. And so sending out the sign up email before school even starts is definitely helpful.
Dominic, you said that you guys budget $500 for FLL and about 1,000 to 2,000 for FTC, and I assume that's every year. And what is that 500? What are they? Once you bought the kit, and I know that every year you there's like game specific parts and a map. Is that what you're spending your $500 on, or can you tell us more about what this budget is for?
Yeah, that's for the most part. I think registration is $150, and then the mat is, I think, 100 or 95. So that's already there, $250-ish. And then, snacks and food at competitions, that sort of things. Sometimes you need to get just a bit of cardboard for a prototype for your project or something. Just sort of like a miscellaneous budget. I don't know if they actually use all $500. And a lot of it actually isn't coming from our team, because we found out the first few years of doing our program was if we made it free, parents would just send their kids there as an after-school program. And it was like, that's not helpful. So now I think we do it that it's $50 to be on the team. And, if a parent, and similar to how we do it on the FRC team, we say $50 is the recommended amount. But if you can't make that and you're really passionate about the team, we'll make it possible for you to be on the team free of charge. And it's just sort of the like, all right, you actually do need to be invested in this team to be on it, because we have a lot more demand than we have spots on the teams right now. So making sure that students actually are interested in the work is helpful. Yeah, Jeremy.
Hey, so I'm glad you brought up the whole money thing, because some of the thing is about if it was, because in our school, the way we do ours is if you're in middle school, it's $25, and that's just the student activity fee, just the way to do it with other sports. Now, my question is, what's your recommendation with, or your opinion about having starting with third grade? Because my student pool is very, maximum we have about 300 students in our school total. So that's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that first sets the limit of fourth grade to start the program of First Lego League Challenge. They also do have First Lego League Explore, which is, I think, first through third grade. And that's sort of identifying a real world problem and trying to solve it, depending on whatever the theme is. And I think that's only a 6-week, 5 or 6 week season. And so they're a lot shorter. And it's sort of still getting into that critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork skills. It's definitely not, I wouldn't call it robotics personally. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure first as an organization limits it to fourth grade, unfortunately. And so, yeah, also then depending on what grade you then get onto your FRC team, you can have students going all the way up to 8th grade on the FLL teams. But, you don't want to draw from the same pool. So it's sort of tricky there.
And Dominic, you mentioned FLL Challenge. That's the top tier, because are there 4 tiers now of FLL? Is that right?
So I'm pretty sure there's First Lego League Discover, which is pre-K and kindergarten, and then there's First Lego League Explore, which is 1st through 3rd grade. Then there's First Lego League Challenge, which is 4th through 8th grade. I don't have that much experience in First Lego League Discover or Explore because I wasn't there when they were started.
And the challenge one is the only one that actually makes a robot, right? The other ones do more of a science project, and they have one or maybe two motorized components, but it's not a robot that drives around.
That sounds.
The last time I looked at it, I feel like that's what it's. But it's been a while, and I know they've made some changes, so I wasn't 100% sure. The challenge is that top tier where you actually build a little robot.
Yeah.
Do you have Spike kits, or are you still running the Mindstorm kits?
Yeah, so we have the Spike kits. I think we got them 3 or 4 years ago. I don't remember exactly.
Oh, I didn't realize they were that old already.
Yeah. But, you know, we used a lot of the actual, like, pieces from the EV3 because they're cross-compatible.
Yeah.
So that's helpful.
Okay, that's good to know. I know that I looked this up last spring because we were looking at buying some kits, and then we decided we didn't have time for this school year. Do you remember how much those Spike kits are? Just off, we could all go Google it and look it up, but I feel like it was 1,000 or 1,500.
Maybe. Okay, they're $400.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
We just ordered quite a few, and then you really need an expansion pack to go with it, which is like another 150, or just more Legos and motors, because the base kit doesn't have a lot of just pieces and motors. It has more the expensive parts, mainly the control hub that it comes with.
So Lauren, what did you end up spending per team when you were buying your kits? What was your kind of total getting started spend per team that you started?
We haven't really started a team yet. We were running a Lego camp because we're looking to start a team.
Okay.
We bought one base kit, and then we got 3 expansion kits, and that seemed to work well to do about 3 groups. The main thing is the control hub is one of the biggest things that if you're doing multiple teams, if you get like one base kit, you're going to need another control hub at least, because it's, well, for the competition, they need more than one. And then when you're practicing and building it, you need to mainly be able to test more than one robot at once. Is one of the biggest things. And like your first year, you have a lot of like not necessarily enough Lego pieces, but like the sets you buy like for the challenge themselves has a lot of Lego pieces. So past your first year, you'll have a lot of Lego pieces that'll be great to use for like the building and the structure side of it.
Did you say that to compete, you need multiple control hubs? Did I miss
If you're doing more than one team.
Oh yeah, sure. Okay, that makes sense. Yep. So the summer camps that you're doing, are they week-long camps?
It wasn't it was more in the fall. We did it after school for 4 days, basically, and it worked pretty well. I'd say if you could do a summer camp, you probably need to. A week long would be good. More than that, and kids kind of get bored as there's not necessarily a lot for them to do without going to the full level of like having them build a complete full robot as like a team.
Dominic, what do your camps look like? Yeah, so we do them over the summer, and we do 5 days. But we do basically like little challenges. So like the first day, it's like build a robot that can drive from point A to point B, and that's a straight line. And then that's like the morning challenge, and then they disassemble their robot, and then they build another robot for the afternoon challenge or whatever. And so then each day we like focus on different things. So like our second one is like our structural day, and so we do like a tug of war challenge between robots. And then our third day is like our sensors day, and so we do like line following. And they're simple challenges that we do that are just little fun things that aren't exactly the same as First Lego League, but they're sort of in the similar vein.
And is it a week? Is it 5 days?
I think we do 4 days. I don't think we do the Friday, but that's just because our school doesn't do 5-day long summer camps. I think we do it through our school, and so they only do 4 days.
And do you charge for your camps?
Yeah, we do a similar thing to our team fees. We do, I think, 125 is the recommended amount, but it's pay what you can.
And that 125 includes lunch?
No. They have to bring their own snacks and lunch from home. And I think we do an 80-20 split with the school, so the team gets 80% of the funds. And so I think last year we got roughly 6,000 from our summer camps over the 3 weeks. So, and we do 16 kids in a week, roughly. So
that's nice.
Yeah.
Good fundraiser.
Good question here. Okay, so where did you get your Mindstorm kit from? Because when I went before we did our summer camp, when I went to Lego, their own website, it was out of stock, and then they said it was back order or something like that. So I wonder where do you get your kit from?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now, and they don't seem to be out of stock.
Oh no, this was back in the summer.
Oh, okay.
So I was wondering, is that something that they just like our stuff with FRC? Do they go out of stock and then come back and back and forth? I'm just wondering. That way, if I have to shop ahead of time before the summer, then I can do that.
Yeah, I would assume that's how it is. It's Lego. So they have different things.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, Jeremiah, if it runs just like every other first vendor where they do a big, gigantic order, and then once they're out of stock, they're out of stock until they put in another big order.
Okay. Thank you.
If no one else had questions, I guess I had a question with like the transition between FLL and FRC. We found that it's sort of difficult to get that transition right. You either have everyone on the lower team wanting to get into FRC, right? And we just don't have the space for them, or we end up that all of the people on the FTC or FLL teams have no idea that the FRC team exists, and they just are like, okay, this is robotics, and I will just continue with this. So I guess, do any of y'all have solutions? One thing we've been trying is having FRC students mentor these teams and sort of have that sort of role model. I don't know.
If no one else will jump in, we have ideas on how to solve this problem, but we've not done it yet. So I can share what we're thinking around this space. But having never done it, I have no idea if it's going to work. So if any of the other folks on here are running teams and have advice, please jump in as well. KnightKrawler had an FTC team for a couple of years. We tried to use it as our JV squad because our team was getting overly big. Turns out it actually wasn't as big as our several years of our FRC team being very large. But we thought, maybe the easy thing to do here is all freshmen and all freshmen go to FTC And then if you come in as a sophomore, junior, senior, then you get to choose, and maybe you have to apply. I forget exactly how it worked. And what we found with that was that we spent our veterans on FRC and too many of our mentors spent most of the fall working with the FTC students, and we neglected to train our new FRC students. And after 2 years, we said, this is a failed experiment. We're hurting our FRC program by having FTC as sort of a JV squad, and without having a dedicated set of separate mentors to work on FTC, we can't do this. And I think largely that was because it's still Java programming. I mean, we were doing Java programming because we wanted to have that skill at least come up. It's still programming, so you're still teaching kids how to code. It's still tools. It's not a lot of tools. It's not the kind of tools we're using in FRC, but it's still tool training. It's still sort of these mechanical concept trainings. And the training for us didn't seem to be all that different between FTC and FRC. It's just that a lot of that didn't translate. And so we were losing sort of our FRC knowledge. And so when we have our new discussions about starting smaller teams, we're talking about doing FLL only. And we are thinking about setting up a sort of thing where we make space available, and we do sort of like, I think what you've described is you sort of float and you check on people, or there's always a way for you to come, like Jeremiah was saying with Aerobots, you can come and ask me any question you want, but I can't be there all the time to help. And so we're thinking about setting up a kind of a train the trainer, train the mentor thing, where if a parent is willing to coach their student and their friends, then we would train the parent on how to do what they need to do. And then we would create a space for them to use if they could work anywhere they wanted to work, whether they worked at their elementary school or their middle school or wherever they wanted to work. They could work there. They could work in somebody's home if the other parents were okay with that. Or we would create a dedicated space for them in our space during our meeting time, where they could come in and get help from bigger kids or other mentors. That's our thought. We've not tried this yet, but having seen how FTC created challenges for our FRC team, that's our new plan if we attempt to take this on.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a good strategy to use. I think, like, I was the only FRC student mentoring the FLL teams this year, and it went fine. Maybe one, maybe two other students would have made it a little bit better. But I think just having that sort of one person that they can ask their questions to when they're really stuck, I feel like that's definitely a thing to go for. I know last year I heard of a team where every single one of their FRC students mentors an FLL or FTC team. And I was like, thinking back on that, that is crazy. Thinking about how many teams that would be, and at what point are you mentoring, and at what point are you just on the team? Because I think that's also something that's come up with our programs, is like, especially with FTC, when you have students who are on the FTC team and now they've moved on to the FRC team and they want to mentor the FTC team, how do they sort of have that differentiation between being a student on the team and being a mentor on the team, especially when the people who they were on the team with are still on the FTC team? And so thinking a little bit about that.
Now that you bring up a really good point, and I feel like that creates a really tricky challenge. The idea that last year I built the robot, and this year I'm going to mentor and really be hands off. And so at KnightKrawler, we have a rule that you can't come back after you graduate from high school. You can't come back to the team until every student who was on the team when you were on the team is no longer there. Typically, that means you're gone for 3 years and you come back in your 4th year at the earliest. And we do that because we want to create that distinction between students to be able to say, oh, this senior who was our build captain or a primary driver last year, they're still looking at them as a peer and also as a leader, rather than looking at them from a sort of a coaching perspective. And with FTC, that's not so bad, because technically until 12th grade, you can still build the robot as much as you want. But if you're really trying to create a dynamic where someone shifts from being a sort of a top tier competitor as a student to being a coach of other competitors, it's a hard transition. And a lot of adults can't make that transition, and students without a lot of life experience, I gotta imagine that's tricky.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jesse. That was definitely something I felt this fall. And I think that is where sort of the balance of how, like, my first priority is to the FRC team, and thinking about having multiple students then. So maybe you're on a rotation that, if you have 5 students mentoring the FLL teams, you only go once every other week or something. And so that could solve the issue of having a lot of time dedicated to robotics. That was definitely something we thought of when thinking about mentoring, and how it doesn't need to be the same person every year or every week, and whatnot. We just haven't necessarily found the interest yet in mentoring. I think that's also a question I have, is like, how do you have students get interested in mentoring the teams when, especially when they're new students, like, well, I just joined robotics. Why do I need to mentor this other robotics program? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's tricky. I feel like if you're forcing a student into that situation, they're probably not going to do a very good job. I mean, I think you kind of have to have the passion for wanting to do it. I think there's a difference between I don't want to do this and I'm afraid to do this. And if you can identify the people that don't want to do that and say, okay, fine, because we don't want to create a bad experience anywhere, either for you being forced to do this mentoring or for the students who are sort of being mentored by someone who really doesn't want to do it. I think the trick would be identifying the kids that would say, well, yeah, I don't mind working with younger kids if I knew what I was doing, and then get them over that hurdle of, hey, you can do it. Let's teach you some things. My recommendation would be the approach of find the kids who aren't doing it because they're concerned that they won't do it well, but they would happily do it if you could help them build that confidence. That would be my advice. But I don't know. I'm hesitant to push somebody who doesn't want to do it into that role, because I think it'll be a bad experience for both parties.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone else have any questions?
So Dominic, how have your teams done that you've done? Have they won any? I assume that you're doing regional competitions, because it sounds like you're buying the first official registration.
Yeah.
And have you had teams that have gone beyond? And do you only do one regional, or do you do multiples?
For first LEGO League, you only do one regional, and we haven't had too much success, just due to the late start that schools get, and the limited hours that we do. I think this year we had a team get the Motivate Award, which is sort of like the Team Spirit Award, and then we had one get the Rising All-Star, which is like the your rookie team, and we expect great things from you in the future. So those were 2 cool awards that we got this year. So, we were probably middle of the pack at our tournaments. So not like state, like advancing to state, but still.
Oh, so there is a state tournament for FLL. I know that there's one
Yeah.
for FTC, but there's one for FLL too.
Yeah, so you do a regional, and then I think 2 out of the 12 teams at a division at a regional advance, roughly, to state, and there's 64 teams there. It's actually at the River Center this year. And so, yeah. And so they have, I think they have 470 FLL teams in Minnesota this year, and they have 64 teams at state.
Nice. So then, do you remember when state is held? Because I will share the reason why I ask is because FTC state was basically week 5 of build season. And
it's the same. Yeah, it's the same weekend.
Because that was always a big challenge for us, is that we were like, our FTC went to state, now we've got 2 or 3 mentors who are spending a Saturday there, and maybe a student leader as well, instead of trying to get the mechanism working on the robot, or heaven forbid your programming lead, that's the time they're trying to get autos started or done, and they're gone because they're helping with state. It was a big challenge for our team to try to use that as when we tried to do it as JV, it hurt our FRC program when we did that. So again, another reason why we're given this idea of like mentor the mentor, coach the coach type thing.
Yeah,
but
and
that's interesting. I didn't know that. I knew that there was champs because I've seen the Lego League at champs, but I didn't know that there was Lego League state.
Yeah, so you have the regionals, and then you have the 1 state at Minnesota, and then I want to say 3 FLL and 3 FTC teams advanced to Houston from the state, which is severely underrepresenting Minnesota. But I think one way we've tried to remedy that, especially since our FTC team has one of their second qualifier in like mid to late January, is saying, we're going to support you during the practices, but we won't be there for the competition. And so having dedicated mentors for the FTC and FLL teams who are there, can support the team at the competitions, and then having the FRC students sort of being there for the practices, and then they might be there for competitions, they might not, and sort of just being there almost as like sprinkles on the cookie.
Yeah, I feel like that's the smart philosophy. I really do. I think that's smart. I think I have exhausted my list of questions I was writing down. Does anyone else have any questions for Dominic? Maybe something will come up. Let's take a break. We've got plenty of time left in the meeting. I'm curious to know if anybody has any predictions on Crescendo with new teaser videos and hints that have been coming out. Let's chat about that quick, and then hopefully someone will come up with some more questions about FLL and FTC. Anybody have any predictions?
Well, I can share the predictions that our team captain has.
You think your team captain will be okay with that?
Yes. He's shared these on Chief Delphi and whatnot.
Okay.
But so the kit of parts has non-compliant wheels. They have 2 orange ones, and no gearbox, and they're done through Sims. And so the idea is that it will be a direct drive shooter, which is definitely interesting.
That was noticed by my team as well. My theory is it's going to be small parts, so probably small balls. But I mean, there's other things that you could shoot at high velocity that isn't a ball. But I have a theory that we are going to be able to hold a lot of game pieces this year.
So something similar to 2017 was that?
Power up.
Steamworks.
The Steamworks, yeah, the yellow wiffle balls.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something like that. I think during Steamworks, you could start with 10 wiffle balls, but I think our robot could hold 25 or 30 wiffle balls. So yeah, I think that's a good guess. And the other thing I'm thinking about is that there'll probably be uniform. There might be only one game piece, but there might be multiple colors, which would require to do color sorting. And they tried to do that color sorting stuff in Rapid React with the red tennis ball and the blue tennis ball. But since you could only hold 2, you were unlikely to need to really kind of use a color sort at all. You were not likely to pick up the wrong ball on auto. And then during the match, every once in a while you pick up the wrong ball, but you could just turn around and shoot it out. But I'm wondering if they're going to, they gave us that color sensor, which was an I2C sensor, which ended up crashing the rover reel because of firmware issue they never tracked down. But any team that's been around since then has got a color sensor. So I wonder if they're going to try to go back to that and encourage teams to do the color sensor thing and put that back in the KOP. So I don't know. I think you're right, though. I think it's direct drive wheeled shooter based on that. This is what you'll get if you didn't opt out of that tote. So I think that's a really smart guess.
Any thoughts what the end game will be? I've been seeing a lot of people say it'll be either climbing a ramp or a set of stairs.
Yeah.
I mean, it is crescendo. It is approaching a peak or a high, or yeah. I think those are good guesses too. It's probably. I mean, it could be climbing a rope too, right? If you're doing a crescendo, like going up a mountain climbing ropes. I don't know. We did rope climbing for Steamworks. Heck, maybe it's going to be Steamworks 2.0, just with orange and purple balls or something like that.
I'm going with stairs. I think stairs.
Yeah. I like stairs, and I like stairs and potentially a platform up on there on top because it's crescendo, it's performance. So I don't know. Stairs would be an interesting task. I mean, we did that in Deep Space. We went up to a platform, but most people just went from the bottom to the top. They didn't go multi-stage climbing. So that'll be interesting to see. So, yeah, this is our last meeting before kickoff, I believe. I think Lexi canceled all the meetings between now and kickoff. So this is our last chance to talk about it.
Hey, question here. Speaking of the calm before the storm. So, looking at FTC is center stage and they're painting. So since we're crescendo, are we going to be singing an opera?
Wait, what was that? You were wondering if we're going to sing in an opera?
Well, since center stage, FTC, and they kind of, using pixels and moving pixels, and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, what is the essence of crescendo if it doesn't have a musical theme to it? That's kind of the mind bender for me. It's like,
well, last year's game didn't really match the theme very much either, so we might be leaning a little bit too hard into the theme. So
I take opera over Baby Shark all day.
I want to know if we're going to be able to put speakers on the robot for the first time.
That's yeah, right.
I suspect the answer is no, but it would be fun if they didn't, because they've specifically had it in the rules that you can't have any speakers on your robots in the past. I'm pretty sure that's been in the rule book for a while. So it'd be interesting if that just subtly is removed from the rule book and people are allowed to put speakers on their robot.
You can play a nice tune if you have Falcons.
That's true. If you have Falcons, you can use the music library.
Yeah.
It's called Orchestra,
Really nice
isn't it?
doing that.
Isn't the library for the Falcons noise thing called Orchestra
Yes.
or Symphony or something like that?
Yeah. Another thing that we noticed was that in the third teaser that revealed the auto stop, they had a red and blue tape line at the driver's station. The idea was that one team from the opposing alliance would swap sides of the field, which would be interesting. So you would have two red teams and a blue team on the same side of the field, and you would have two blue teams and a red team on the same side of the field, which might be interesting.
Where was this at? I did not notice this.
In the third backstage tour that revealed the A-Stop feature,
Yeah.
there was a blue and red line next to the driver's station.
Oh, interesting.
That could also be for human player, right? So the human player is on the opposite side of the field, like it usually is.
That makes more sense. Boy, that would be super hard to coach if you're in an alliance and the coaches are trying to communicate. That'd be really tricky if you had a team on the other side.
It'd be interesting though.
Yeah, and you could, you could pick up on their strategy maybe and sort of signal to the other side somehow. I mean, you're not allowed to use radios or walkie-talkies or anything like that, but it could be interesting. You have to get out the old Navy signal flags.
I like Dominic's take on that as opposed to the maybe a little more realistic take of the human players, but I like that. Might be kind of fun.
You would just need to scream really loud. It would be a crescendo.
There you go.
Okay, any other predictions or any other FTC FLL questions? We made it to an hour. I'm happy to end at an hour. An hour is a great time to chat too. We don't have to hit that 90-minute mark every night. FTC and FLL are a little bit smaller topic, but man, I feel like we covered some great stuff tonight. I have some neat ideas. I'm also happy to hear how you guys are doing summer camps. So for me, let me give you a summary of what I thought was super helpful for this topic tonight. I love that you guys shared your budget numbers for how you run this stuff and in terms of what you charge for camps and how much money you make. That is super helpful for a team that's trying to decide, should we do this or not? It feels to me like if you're going to buy a half a dozen FLL kits, that part of your strategy has to be to hold the summer camp and charge a fee that for the most part can cover a lot of that cost, especially if you did it 2 or even 3 years, to be able to cover those costs for not only buying the kits, but then even potentially covering that annual budget that you talked about earlier. As the finance guy for KnightKrawler, I loved those facts, and I hadn't even thought to ask about them until after we started talking about it. So that was super helpful. And I liked what we talked about in terms of how you sort of balance the management of those teams with active students and active mentors. I feel like those plans make sense, and I feel like this is probably achievable. Oh, I have a question. How do you recruit? How do you find the 4 teams that you're doing? How do you recruit those? What's your process for that?
I actually have no idea. I think we just sort of send out an email and to the entire elementary school, basically. And they're like, hey, we have this cool robotics program for 4th through 6th graders. Here's a Google form to sign up for. And then I think it's mostly done through seniority. And then I think we give a preferential admission for students of color and non-male students, just for diversity and equity and whatnot. And I think it's just word of mouth that we have grown into such a program that we have more students than necessary that want to get on the team, so we can always fill those spots.
That's good. Yeah, I think we've got some FLLs somewhere in our district. We have 7 middle schools and 2 kindergarten centers. And I know that we've got some FLLs somewhere. I think it's actually the pre-K FLL that's happening. I don't think it's challenge. But there might be challenge in some of our elementary schools. I don't think there's FLL in any of the middle schools. We have 3 middle schools. 2? I think we have 2 or 3 middle schools in our district, 2 high schools. So we have to track down where that makes sense. I mean, I suppose we probably could just use social media and district newsletters too, but that's good advice.
Hey, Scott, this is Tracy. So for the robotic camp that Lauren had talked about earlier, we just had a flyer distributed through the school because we worked with the Little Canada Park and Rec Association, so they already have all the contacts at the school. So we just gave them basically the flyer, and they circulated it, and it was really quick to sign up. I think we charged $30 is all for the 1 week, 4 nights.
Oh, and you did yours as an evening program.
Yeah, it was from 4 to 5:30. Because school didn't get at that particular school, it doesn't get out till 3:30.
Oh, you didn't do it as a summer camp. You did it as a
we did that one in the fall. We're looking at hosting it again in the spring or the summer. They want us to do it again. Probably the biggest thing that we learned from it is you, especially when they're on the younger end, it's a huge difference when they're like 2 or 3 years of age apart. So if you're gonna do camps, really try to limit them to 2 grades at most. You could cater it for younger and you could cater it for older, but it's a huge difference in able to concentrate or focus or understand things between like a 1st and 2nd grader and like a 3rd and 4th grader and a 5th and 6th grader. There's eons of difference between them.
Yeah, and I would imagine a 2-year difference is also going to cause the younger student to be sort of pushed to the side as well. And a lot of those
it could, yeah. So that's probably the biggest thing that we learned from the one that we hosted in November. Is I think we had like 3 years of students, and that really there was a huge difference between it. But they did have a good time. And it was $550 basically to get the Spike, Prime, which gives you the controller, and then the expansion. You really need that expansion if you're going to do a team, because you need the extra motors that come in it. Because you only get one big motor with the kit, and that's hard to build a good driving robot with just the one motor. You really need that expansion to get that second one. But there's a lot of grants that are available out there too to start Lego teams. We have a team. We've had teams in Roseville for quite a few years. We haven't really worked with them. But there's a team in Little Canada now. This is their 2nd year. They've qualified for state already. So we're working on going to help them with some of their programming. They're having trouble. It's kind of like basically PID programming to keep it going straight. Because if you don't do that, it's like random every time because the wheels lose traction and stuff. So, but I would recommend if you're looking at, having the mentors at least, or your students kind of, be able to kind of do that in a leadership kind of mentor role, not run the team. Definitely at least buy one for your team so that you can get that knowledge with it. It only takes about 30 minutes to figure out how to program blocks and to be an expert.
Yeah, that's great feedback. All right, that sounds good. Yeah, we started this conversation too late last year, but I'm optimistic that we've had a really unexpectedly, we were way behind in what we thought our finances would be when we finished our budget in September, and we picked up a couple of sponsors, and we've done several fundraisers that we hadn't planned on. So if we finish the year with a surplus, or if it looks like we're going to finish the year with a small surplus, I think we're definitely going to do this. Like you said, just buy one kit and see what's going on. Yeah, this is great. Great info.
Yeah, another thing that we have is like definitely advertising to the parents, because it's gonna be the parents that sign them up for this program, and so really focusing on like, here are all the cool like skills that your child can learn that is applicable in the real world or whatever, which I think is definitely helpful, and sort of thinking about it that way, especially when you're making that email or that flyer or whatever, which is definitely something to look for.
Yeah, and that's what really helped us, Scott, is that we basically sent the Parks and Rec the flyer, and they already distribute that to parents like electronically through the schools. So that was a real quick way to get the students signed up, because the parents are the ones in grade school really that are looking to expand a student's opportunities.
Dominic, what do you want to do? Do you want to call it, wrap up early?
Yeah, that sounds good.
All right. So a reminder for everybody, we are not meeting until after kickoff. So we'll have our first meeting the Sunday after kickoff. I'm pretty sure that's what Lexi has on the sign-up sheet. Ian Frankel's already picked that slot. He wants to do a game review and strategy review. So that's already taken, but there are no additional slots after that. So please, if you have an idea for a topic, go sign up for a topic. I have a feeling we might reserve the first two topics, one for kickoff review, because it's just going to be the next day. And then we might have another one for sort of strategy prototyping review of what people want to share in terms of what they're thinking for strategy. But I suspect by week 3, we'll be back to normal topics again. So if anyone has any thoughts on what they want to share or something they want to lead a discussion on, I would love it if you would go out there and pick a spot. And it might be something, I mean, if I don't know everybody on the call here, but I remember a couple of weeks ago, we talked about for teams that cannot meet every day or don't have big budgets or don't have the programming chops or whatever it might be, the idea of how do you build the robot that makes the perfect third robot? That might actually be a great topic for one of the nights if anyone is interested in hosting that. And it might be very relevant following on the other 2 topics that we've had. I think that's good not only for those teams who might want to build that perfect third robot, but also for the teams that are working on better scouting this year, better strategy. I've actually personally gotten several emails from teams saying, hey, can you help us with our scouting and strategy? And I think this kind of discussion of thinking now or after kickoff, who are you looking for in a third pick, might be great for everybody in case they make it into the top 8. So if we have a spot, I might throw that in there. But if somebody else would love to lead that discussion, I would happily let you put together your talking points or whatever it is you want to talk about with that. But does anyone else have any thoughts on things you would like to see follow in build season? And I can look for people that want to host that topic. Anyone?
A topic about driver selection, driver practice might be a good one.
Oh, yeah. How do you do driver selection? I know some teams have already picked their primary drivers. They did it in the spring. Other teams picked them during build season. That is a good topic. Feel free to throw that in there, Mohammed. That's not a bad idea. And even pit, like how do you pick your pit crew? How do you pick your scouting leads, strategy leads, all of those things. If you haven't done that yet, well, even if you have done it, how is your team doing that for competition specific roles? That would be a good topic. All right. Well, thanks again, Dominic. I really, really appreciate you jumping in here because I was a little worried that I was have to come up with something on the spot. And I got a lot of good stuff out of this. I hope you got some good stuff too that'll help you with your mentoring this year, your team's mentoring going forward. I guess you guys are you done now? Did you do your competitions already?
Yeah, our FLL teams are done, but we have our FTC team has their second qualifier in mid-January. So
got it. Excellent. Well, good luck. I hope you guys do well at that. And thank you again. All right. I'll hopefully see everybody in January. Please come back. I suspect we might have a big crowd after kickoff. Hopefully we get that number back up to 25, 30 people and people stop watching on YouTube because they want to do it live. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you, Dominic, if you're still there.